Okay, well, maybe we'll just go ahead and get started with some introductions and folks will join in. Um, I'm glad you all were able to make it this morning. Rainy morning, so it's perfect for a rain garden workshop. I'm Jen Leach. I work for the Parks Department and I help coordinate a lot of their environmental programs there, education programs and whatnot. And I also help my colleague Pat Johnson um, in public works. He's our stormwater tech and he does a lot of work with rain gardens, works with residents and the city to put rain gardens in around town. So um, we're going to be sort of tag teaming today. I'll be giving the bulk of the presentation. Pat's got a lot of knowledge and he'll chime in things that he can share, and he's definitely more in the know of what's going on currently with rain gardens in the city than I am. So I did notice that folks mostly were able to at least take a look at the handbook. So I'm glad you all got that. Couple of things. It's a small group, so I think that we could probably do some Q&A along the way. We do have quite a bit of material to get through, so I'm thinking if you guys want to ask a question, go ahead and type it into chat, and I can stop the presentation, answer that question. If we do want to have some discussion around it, we can unmute ourselves, but for the time being, I see you guys are all pretty much muted, which is great Zoom etiquette. And we will ask that you stay muted unless you're actually engaging with a question. That way we won't have any interruptions by barking dogs or trash trucks going by and all that stuff that can be kind of a distraction. So okay, and then hopefully at the end we'll have some time for some more open-ended Q&A, a little bit more of a discussion. So if for some reason we get disconnected, there's some technical problem or on our end or your end, just go ahead and give it a few minutes and just come right back here, and hopefully we've have sorted out the problem at that point. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys now. If you did get a chance to look at the handbook, you will notice that a lot of these slides look familiar, and I've tried to put the page number on all the slides that relate to your handbook. So I always like to kind of start these sessions out with a question, and you can just kind of raise your hand if you. We're going to take a quick vote here on who thinks that which activity of this set do you think contributes the most to pollution in Puget Sound? So is it our industrial activities, wastewater discharge into the Puget Sound, or just the general activities of daily living? What do you guys think? Who says industrial activities? Anyone? Wastewater discharge? How about activities of daily living? Okay, wow, you guys are getting good. So normally about a few years ago when I started asking that question, people almost always thought it was industrial activities. Now, most people, I think because there has been so much emphasis put on stormwater awareness, most people are guessing right now it's activities of daily living. And in fact, things like not picking up pet waste, using pesticides, driving on our roads, things like that. It's about 75% of the pollution in Puget Sound is estimated to come from just our activities of daily living. So, so the problem comes as in pre-development, when this was all forested and with natural areas, those natural areas formed sort of a sponge, and when rain would fall, the water would be captured by all of the green stuff and into the soils, and it would soak in and it would get processed and returned to groundwater, and it functioned sort of like a sponge, and that's the natural state as we've developed more and more, and our surfaces have become more and more impervious, we've got streets, we've got houses, we've got sidewalks, we've got roads, all of that stuff, the water doesn't have a chance to sink in like it used to anymore, to be infiltrated back into groundwater, and then of course flow downhill, or into our creeks and streams, and somehow make it back to the Puget Sound. Now it gets put in stormwater pipes, it doesn't get absorbed, or it flows directly from hardscapes into our creeks and streams, and it doesn't get absorbed by the landscape anymore. So everything that runs off of our hard surfaces now, all of those pollutants that come off our cars, all of the pet waste that doesn't get picked up, the detergents that are used for car washing, all of that stuff goes untreated into the storm system, into the creeks, and flows directly to the Puget Sound. So it's a big problem, and we're trying on multiple fronts to address it. You guys have probably seen this kind of slogan, Puget Sound starts here. And that is true. Puget Sound starts right in your own yard, right on your own street. That's the start of Puget Sound. And that's what that means. So how do rain gardens help? Well, rain gardens create an area for water to actually be impounded and soak slowly into the ground. And so rather than, they sort of build back some of that absorbency into the landscape. So rather than having, all the oil and tire dust and everything flowing into the storm drains, all of your roof runoff, into the storm drain, instead, what rain gardens do is they will help direct that water into an area where it can be impounded and soak back in, more in mimicking that natural system. So rain gardens are a nice way to do that. Rain gardens are only one of many low impact development tools. And you guys have probably heard this LID development. And basically it's trying to build back that absorbency in multiple ways. And so rain gardens is just one option for LID, and not every place is right for a rain garden. So it's nice that there's alternatives. If you have an area where a rain garden is not going to work on your landscape, there's other things you can do to manage stormwater in your little area of the world. You can preserve existing vegetation or enhance existing vegetation. So rather than having a big expansive lawn, you could plant pockets of native vegetation or other types of plants that will actually help absorb water better than a typical lawn. You can add something as simple as mulch and compost to your soil to make your soil, amend your soil to be more absorbent and hold more water and be better at processing pollutants. You can harvest rainwater using cisterns, an underground cistern. Some people build that in so that they can actually store the water that comes in the winter, use it in the summertime or throughout the year. Rain barrels, another good option. So there's lots of things you can do besides a rain garden. Rain garden is just one tool. But that's what we are going to be talking about today. And on page 3 of your rain garden handbook, and by the way, if any of you would like a hard copy of the rain garden handbook, let us know and we can figure out a way to get you that. Pat has a whole stack of those in the green room at City Hall, and we can figure out how to get you a hard copy.
Yeah,
but for now, if you've had a chance to look at your digital copy, follow that link, you'll see that a rain garden on the landscape, can look just like a regular garden, where someone may not even know that it's a rain garden, but it's been designed in a very specific way so that it can actually help hold and process this water, this storm water. So we're going to start on the left here. You'll see there's an inflow, and you'll see that it's got some rocks. And that's to protect that area from erosion. So you can imagine as all this water is flowing in, it could easily scour the sides of these soil sides. And so we can build in some armoring, and that's what you see here, the inflow. And then what you have over here, the same thing. On the far right side, you see the overflow. And so that's if the rain garden gets too full, it can overflow into another area that can help absorb that water. Again, that's armor to protect those banks. You can see the depth of this is between 6 and 12 inches. And I think I've been seeing some spec'd at 3 inches as well. And so this is just the ponding area. This is where during a really high rainfall event, you're going to have water that can build up up into this sort of bowl created by this this feature. It's been dug out. Going down, it's about maybe 1 to 2 feet of a very specific type of soil, rain garden soil. That's a mix of compost and sand is the best, but it's actually created in a way that it drains, but also holds water. It sort of does both things, and also really encourages a lot of microorganisms to grow and process that water that's soaking in, get some of those pollutants out. And then this is the existing soil. So basically it's this sort of like bowl that's been dug and then filled with a certain soil mix and allows for certain ponding depth, and then has armored sides to keep the water flowing in the right direction. And then of course the goal is to have this water infiltrate into the groundwater. So it's going basically out the bottom of the rain garden into the ground. Okay, so any questions so far about the anatomy? We're going to sort of get a little bit deeper into all of these parts in a minute, but I thought I would just, Pat, you see any questions in the chat?
I'm just going to work with Sandra on getting her a hard copy of the book. She's reached out, and we're going to make that work. But if anybody else out there would like a hard copy, you know, I can do a no contact residential drop off for you, or I mail too. So if you would like a hard copy, we can definitely figure out a way to get it to you. So just let me know in a chat, maybe privately if you will, and then we can get you an actual copy. So
perfect.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so we're also we have Pat's put together a great list of resources that we're gonna send to you guys after this as well. And those resources are links and contact numbers and emails to folks that can actually help you with the technical side of this stuff and give you more information in general. So you'll have that as well. Okay, so let's look at some rain gardens in Edmonds. I'm going to show you some rain gardens that are part of what we call a residential rain garden cluster that Edmonds partnered with the Snohomish Conservation District, some homeowners and master gardeners several years ago to put in several of these clusters. And these are all demonstration gardens. You can go and look at all these gardens on your own, and I'm going to provide you with maps on how to get there. Or where they're located. You're going to want to look for these signs. So this is a sign that designates this as a demonstration rain garden. This is part of that cluster. You can see this looks, you can see this is got this sort of dip in the middle. This house sits right above Willow Creek. And so it was really a key spot in the landscape to try to manage stormwater. So this has been sort of built into their existing landscape plan. It sort of blends naturally, but it does absorb quite a bit of water. They have disconnected their downspouts from the stormwater system, and now all of their water from their roof gets routed into this rain garden. So they're capturing that. Same with this. Now this is part of that same residential cluster. You can see they had some very mature forest abutting their property, little patch of forest that they really loved, and they wanted their rain garden to sort of blend into that. So this was planted with a lot of great native vegetation that sort of blends into their forest. So that's their rain garden. And if you look in the middle, you can actually see the pipe that's coming in to the rain garden. That is connected also to their downspout system where they disconnected that from the stormwater, the city's stormwater system, and connected it, buried a pipe, and now they're piping all that water into their rain garden. Again, keeping it out of the system. This is one of my favorite rain gardens, and it's just this little rain garden in the front of the house. And you can see that they've taken a very creative approach because of their topography. Their house is downhill of this, basically their yard. And so what they've done, because water flows downhill and they wanted the water to flow to their rain garden, they actually put a pipe from their gutters, their roof gutters, and that rainwater is going directly from their roof in a pipe above ground and dripping right into the rain garden. So that's kind of a creative approach to the topographical problem of how do you get water to flow to a rain garden that's maybe located uphill of your house. So that's what they've done. Which brings us to the question, is a rain garden really right for you? Do you have a spot, knowing that water flows downhill, do you have the right spot for a rain garden that's downhill of hardscapes that are going to actually be draining to that rain garden? This is from page 14 of the manual. And this kind of illustrates some situations that should tell you to look into maybe another LID tool rather than a rain garden if you really don't have the right spot. So if you're near the edge of a steep slope or a bluff, you are definitely not going to want to infiltrate water into that area. It's going to make your slope unstable. If you're within 10 feet of a building foundation, again, you don't want to be having ponded water close to foundation. If you have utilities, you are going to be digging, the rain garden, you do need to dig about 2 to 3 feet down typically in order to build that rain garden structure. If you have utilities under there, that's not a good spot for that. Same with septic or drain fields. You don't want to get anywhere near those areas. If you have a beautiful patch of really well-established vegetation that's already serving as a lot of stormwater mitigation, you're not going to want to tear that out. You should leave that area. It's providing a lot of services in addition to stormwater, a lot of habitat services and carbon sequestration and all of that great stuff. You're probably not going to want to take that out just to put a rain garden in. If you have soils that are very highly compacted, they don't drain well, there's a lot of clay or things like that, if they are not well draining soils, they're probably not going to function well as a rain garden. Because remember, the whole purpose of a rain garden is to capture water and allow it to soak into the ground. If you have soils that aren't allowing water to soak into the ground, then that's not the ideal situation for a rain garden. Similarly, if you have a very high groundwater table and water tends to really pond because the groundwater table is high in that area, that's also not going to drain. So the rain garden is not going to function as a rain garden if you have those situations. Okay, so the drainage rate actually has to be, there's a way the rain garden, the manual, and there's lots of resources out there that will help you learn how to do a drainage test and walk you through the process. So you'll be able to test that yourself. It's pretty easy once you know how to do it. If you do decide that you're going to move forward with your rain garden planning and building, now is the perfect time. We're coming up on the perfect time to actually test your soil drainage. So you're going to want to identify areas on your landscape where the water can actually drain to, and then you're going to want to test your soil just to make sure that that is sort of the right location. Keeping everything else in mind, utilities and septic and all that stuff. So you're going to follow this timeline. Basically, you're going to plan, you're going to figure out if you have the right spot, you're going to do your utility locate, call 811, figure out where your utilities are, and figure out all of that. And what exactly is your soil drainage? So you're going to test all that. And then, we're going to go through this process, but you're going to want to figure out, what size your rain garden needs to be, how you want to plant the rain garden. So then you move into the building process, which happens during the drier months. And then when we roll back around to fall, becomes the right time to plant. And that's so the plants have enough time to build up a decent root system before the next growing season starts. So that's sort of the timeline. So we're coming into the planning time, which is why Pat and I hold these workshops in the fall, just to let folks give plenty of time to get started on that process. Soil drainage rate on page 15 of the manual, you'll be able to see how to test that. Now, unfortunately, I did this test and I poured in 12 inches of water. I dug a hole, I think like 12 or 16 inches deep. I poured all the water in, and I came back the next day and all that water was pretty much still there, maybe an inch or two drained. So there's no way. I do not have the right soil for a rain garden. So I had to give up on that idea, but I have done other things like planting and soil amendments and things like that. So there's a lot of resources online, folks that can help you go through this process. So that's the first thing you're going to want to do. You're also going to want to know what your drainage area is. And this is a diagram from page 19. And we're not going to be doing a deep dive into calculations. I just want you to know like where to find this information and the things you're going to need to know. So the drainage area, it's just an area calculation, length times width equals area, right? So then you can know, if you know the size of your roof, in this case, you can see that this rain garden is being planned. They're going to be capturing this side of the roof, the right side, let's say it's the south side of the roof, all the water from their driveway, and they're going to be putting this into the rain garden. So you're going to need to know, about how much area is going to be draining. And then how much rainwater can you expect? Like how much rain do you actually get? And this is again a chart from the book, and it'll tell you what region you're in and about how much rainfall you get. So they make it pretty easy to figure that out. And then finally, how much suitable space do you have? That's suitable space, meaning it's located in the right area, downhill from where things are going to drain to it. It's away from those existing structures. It doesn't have any utilities, and the soil drainage rates are adequate to actually support a adequate function in the rain garden. So that's the other consideration, how much space you're going to have. Then you kind of put all this together, and again, page 25, it kind of goes through all of those calculations. There's a table you can plug these things into and just figure out what rain garden size you're going to do. But Pat has provided a very handy cheat sheet. And Pat, do you want to just tell people quickly about this, kind of how this would be utilized?
Well, so a lot of times people will, what I get over the phone a lot is, I just moved into Edmonds, or I want to put a rain garden in my house, and they don't know about sizing and how to calculate the impervious surface of their house, like what comes off their roof, what comes off their driveways or their sport courts or whatever you're trying to take care of. And once upon a time, I think I cut this out of or I saw this in a magazine, and I thought, boy, I'm gonna tape this right on my desk so I can refer to this as a quick reference to sizing a rain garden. So if you do the calculations, which Jen just went over, and you know how much impermeable surface you want to take care of on your property, this is just a quick reference guide and it's laid out very easily to understand if you just look at it for a second, to figure out what the size of rain garden you actually need, because you don't want to go through the process and install a rain garden that is inadequate. So following this basic rule of thumb table here is just a great way to accurately size your rain garden. And that's about the gist of it. where it starts is you measuring
and you can
how
see
much. Yeah, where it starts is measuring how much you need to take care of on your property first and foremost. So
it's that impermeable surface, all of this, right? So then you can kind of figure out how much, and then that's just kind of the quick reference, which is great. It gives you a rough idea of about how much space you're gonna be looking for. And what I like about this is, depending on what you want your rain garden to look like, some people, you could build a rain garden, it would look just like a regular garden. And we're going to talk about the planting palette coming up in a little time from now. But rain garden can really be anything you want it to be. Like we saw some examples of that, like that the family on 3rd Avenue with the forested patch wanted their rain garden to sort of blend into their landscape as sort of a native forest. And so that's the planting plan and the depth and how that was actually planned out. So if you want a small rain, you can have a small deep rain garden or a larger shallower rain garden. It just really depends on what you're going for, how much space you have, how much water you need to process, and what you want it to look like. So we're going to be looking at more examples. This is an example of Pat, this is from the Sierra Drive residential cluster. This was a plan that was built in 2015. And so it's, if you're not used to reading engineering plans, it might take a minute to sort of get your eyes around this, but look at, so let's see, let's go to the very top right corner. You see that there's the existing house, that's the footprint there. And then you can also see contributing roof area. They've calculated to be approximately 780 square feet, right? And so what they've decided to do in this case, they were going to disconnect their downspouts. And I actually have a picture of this being installed next. But basically, they disconnected the downspout, put the downspout into this pipe, the PVC pipe. Can you guys see my cursor on the screen?
Yeah.
You can? Okay. They put the downspout from here into this pipe and ran it into this rain garden here. They sized the rain garden to about 130 square feet based on the fact that they wanted to process 780 square feet running off of the roof. Okay. So they put a pipe from the downspout into the garden underground, and then they did the same thing over here with their other downspout. And then so they buried these pipes, disconnected from the sewer or the storm system. Here was an existing tree. They decided to leave that tree because that was doing all kinds of great things on their landscape. They didn't want to disturb it. So they designed the rain garden over here. And so they shaped it to go around that tree to not be disturbing to the roots or anything like that. And then, so they have right here too, you can see River Rock Inlet. Oops, excuse me. River Rock Inlet right here. That's the pipe goes right into that rock pad, and the water, instead of flowing through soft soil and eroding the side of that inlet, they've armored it with river rock. Same thing with overflow. In the event they just got a huge storm where this couldn't process all of that water, they have this overflow pad. And again, as the water flows over this, it's armored with river rock. And they have a little bit more area here, a little buffer of lawn. So in the event of an overflow, it's going to overflow to another area that can then absorb that excess water. So that's what the plan looks like from an engineering perspective. Okay. And we're going to look at how this being installed here. We're moving on to the build. So then that's the plan, right? This ends the planning stage. So this would maybe be completed. You would kind of know the size, the depth, all of that stuff, how much water you need your garden process by the end of the winter, late spring. So When things start drying out a bit, then you start the build process. Okay, so here we are. There's a few ways to dig, again, depending on how much labor you have access, how many friends you have, how many, how many folks you want to come and help you either dig the rain garden or hire a crew. Sometimes, you know, you can use a backhoe, makes the job go much faster, but in some cases, there's not really room on the landscape for this. The garden's going to be on the smaller side. So, and you may not be able to get a piece of equipment like this close enough to the area where you're going to build it. If you do use machinery, you're going to want to be careful not to actually compact the soils even more. So, you know, digging, there's a lot of really great guidance in the handbook around digging, you know, how deep it goes, how to slope the sides, that kind of thing. So it goes through it in quite a bit of depth. You're going to want to know what kind of soil you're going to be using or wanting to fill this with before you start digging, because that is going to dictate how you dig and how you store the soil that you're digging out of that area. So when you do your soil test, they are also going to guide you through what's called a soil. So it's not just a drainage rate test. You're actually going to be evaluating the soil texture and what type of soil you have, whether your soil has a lot of clay, whether it has a lot of sand, whether, you know, how much organics are in there, basically the whole composition, the structure of your soil. You're going to know that after you do your soil test. When you do your drainage test, that'll be part of the soil test. And depending on the texture, the type of soils that you have, you can either use that soil to backfill, you know, along with an amendment that will bring it more into line with the mix that should be there, the 60%, 40% compost mix. So you might be able to get there by amending your existing soil. But in the case of soil that will not be able to be amended to meet that criteria, you're going to want to excavate all of that soil, either use it in a different part of your landscape to build up a hummock, or give it to somebody else to use in their garden, or just have it hauled away to be integrated into a whole new soil mix by a commercial processor. You'll want to maybe excavate that soil entirely and then replace it to the right level with the garden soil mix. If your soil is adequate to find the right mix with some amendments, you can excavate it, amend it, you know, on your own by mixing that compost and other the minerals just to get it to that right level. You can amend it out of the garden, or you can actually partially dig out the garden, add the amendments, amend it in place. So those are your three options. But whatever you do, you're going to want to aim for this soil mix of 60% sand, 40% compost. This is what it looks like. This, I believe, looks like it's being looks like it might be being amended in place. This looks like compost that's been added, and they're probably going to mix all this up. You can see the drain that at this point, as you're building it, this is where you're going to be, you know, replacing or digging in your drainage pipes. And you can see these are set probably about 6 to 12 inches down. Again, probably, I would say the house in this case is probably a little bit out of the picture, but you can see it's being piped, and that's I'm sure from the roof downspouts. And so this is what it looks like being built with the soil amendments. And then once it gets filled, there's a thick layer of mulch, about 3 to 4 inches of mulch. And that does a few things. It, again, helps prevent erosion. It helps keep the moisture in. And again, there's a lot of microorganisms that are going to be in that mulch that are going to be helping process and filter all that water. You can see the armored inlets here. And in this case, I do know that this is taking runoff from the roof. So there's a downspout that's been buried or connected to a pipe and then piped into this garden from that side. And then here, there's a walkway and some other stuff over here. And this is just kind of a natural area where this runs off in kind of a sheet runoff from the lawn, and it's going to run right into the rain garden. So this is capturing all the rain garden, both from their surface of their yard and the surface of their walkways, and also from their roof. So this is what it looks like when it's all ready to be planted. So now we're getting to my favorite part of rain garden design, is the planting. This shows just before planting party. And this is a group of neighbors. They all got together and planned their rain gardens together and planted together. And it was just a really great way for them to work together to bring some rain gardens into their neighborhood. You'll see that these plants, they're in the lower part. You can see kind of like sedges and kind of a different plant palette than what you have up here, where it gets a little bit shrubbier. So we're going to talk about how how to select plants and how that process happens, like which plants go where. Plants, as you guys all know, probably if you're here, you are interested to some extent in gardening, I would imagine. And you know that some plants do better. They are more tolerant of drought. They're more tolerant of flooding. They're more tolerant of standing water. Certain plants are adapted to really wet areas. You'll find a certain suite of plants in wetlands, very different than what you're going to find in an upland forest or a shrub area. So the manual makes it really, really easy to help you pick plants that are going to work in the rain garden. So just kind of talking about planting by zones. The first zone, zone 1, is what they call it in the manual. And these are going to be plants that are in the wettest area of the garden. So they might actually be in standing water for a few days, or even a week, if it's really raining hard for a long time. These guys are going to have to withstand being in ponded water for quite a while during the wettest time of the year. Zone 2 are plants that, if the garden really fills up, it's a really heavy rain, they might be in standing water for part of the time, but they're also going to be in drought conditions, during the dry period when it all dries out. So they're going to have to be really tolerant of both wet and dry. So those are the plants that are going to be in zone 2. And then in zone 3, these are plants that are almost never going to be in standing water. These are the plants that are going to be more typical landscaping shrubs that you would, or plants, flowers, or whatever, your preference is. These are going to be plants that you're more typically used in landscaping for areas that are typically upland areas. So those are plants that are going to prefer drier conditions and never really have to withstand, a lot of standing water or soggy feet. Other considerations, and this is really fun, is that you can decide what you want your rain garden to look like. I mean, it's a functional piece of infrastructure, but it's also a beautiful garden. You can decide what you want that to look like. Do you want it to blend into your existing landscape and carry on some of that planting that you already have going on and look like it just sort of fit in seamlessly? Do you want to provide support for pollinators, attract, butterflies and things like that, bees, to support our pollinators, or wildlife? Maybe you want to attract birds to your yard and you want to plant things that are going to attract those things. The mature plant size, there's a lot of talk these days about the right plant, right place, right tree, right place. You're not going to want to plant something that's going to get really huge and block your view when you're trying to pull out of your driveway. So you're going to want to consider the mature size of things. How big is it going to get? And is it still going to work not only for stormwater management in a rain garden, but for you? living out your typical life and the other things that matter to you. Underground utilities, even if those utilities are, not, within 36 inches of the surface, you're not going to dig into them. Will the roots of a tree that you might plant on the side, are those roots going to get deep and big and start interfering, growing into your pipes or interfering with some of the other utilities? That's a concern that you're going to want to think about. We talked about the tolerance to flooding and drought, and that's what we take care of with the zonation of the planting zones. And then finally, maintenance. How much maintenance are you going to want to do? For me, my happy place is being out in the garden. I would spend most of my time, I'm home in the garden if I could. And I just love doing that. Other people don't love doing that. They have no interest in doing a lot of maintenance. And so, for folks that aren't interested in a lot of maintenance, then you're going to want to pick plants that, are probably native, that are really adapted to these conditions. And you're going to want to plant pretty densely so you don't have a lot of weeds to worry about. So those are your, things that you should be considering when you're choosing a planting palette. And so the manual makes it really easy. And this is my absolute favorite part of the manual. It's in appendix, I think appendix A, and it really lays things out. And I wonder if I can zoom in, and yes, I can. Can you guys see I'm zoomed in? Okay. So this is all organized by, like, is it trees and shrubs? Is it ground covers? Is it flowers? Like, you can basically figure out, kind of like, you can use this almost as like a shopping guide, right? Like, let's say that you have zone 1. So if you want like a ground cover, or you're looking for something nice for your zone 1, then here at the top, it tells you which zone these are appropriate to. So you'll say, oh, okay, well, lady fern, that'll do really well in that lower zone, or this deer fern will do really well. If you're looking for something for the upper zone 3, you come and you say, oh, that aster, yeah, that's pretty. And you can decide. And so it also tells you whether it's native or not. And it tells you its light preference. So does it like full sun? Does it like partial sun? Or does it like full shade? So you can really, really find things that are adapted to that particular condition, exactly what you're looking for. Tells you the mature size. And if you're thinking about, wanting sort of year-round interest, year-round color, to your garden, it'll tell you what time it blooms. And so you can really plan to have nice color or pollinator support all season long. So that's a great tool. And personally, I learned a lot about plants just looking through these sections. It'll tell you also, let me zoom out a little bit. It'll give you a little bit of, tell you about the plant characteristics. And so you can learn a little bit more about that. And the master gardeners are also a great resource if you talk to them about what you have. Here I have, this is another one, small to medium sized shrubs, another page. And in this case, you can see it's like 4 to 6 feet. It's great for zone 2. It's not native. It loves full sun. It's going to get 5 feet high, and 3 to 4 feet wide. So this really can help you plan how to plant your rain garden, and give you some ideas. And then there's, of course, large shrubs and trees, but it's a great section, a great tool. Like I said, there's other resources like the master gardeners, but this can actually get you started, just thinking about what those concerns are, and what you should be thinking about when you think about planting. So this is just a quick planting plan. This is for a shady area, right? And so they've mapped out their inflow, they've got their outflow, they've got their sloped sides with the different zones, and this is what they've chosen. So they have some emergence, they've got some sedges, they've got some ferns, They've got a few deciduous shrubs. And then zone 2, they've picked another suite of plants that are adapted for that. And then zone 3, another suite of plants. And so this can really help you. And I believe the manual also goes into planting densities as well. So there's a nice full section about all that. This shows a planting party, 2015. They're getting all those plants in the ground with their neighbors. I think they planted about 6 yards in 2015. And this is the finished look. And if you want to go see these rain gardens, we're going to give you a map, but you'll want to look for these signs. Maintenance. Let's talk quickly about maintenance, because everything needs maintenance, especially plants. They grow really, really fast during the season. Some of them do. I talked to you a little bit about erosion. This is a big problem with rain gardens. You can imagine they're all capturing this water. If the sides aren't kept well mulched, or those inlets and outlets aren't well armored, you can get a big problem with the scouring away of the soil in the rain garden. This is another example of that. This is the solution. Keep it well mulched, right? Got a nice thick layer of mulch on there all the time. It helps keep the weeds out. It helps keep the water in and infiltrating, and it helps keep your soil in place. Armoring, right? Got to freshen that up. Another example of that, armored inflow. The water's flowing off this parking area right into those rocks. And so no erosion is happening there. Clogged inflow could also be a problem. You know, a lot of leaves and needles come down. If your inflow gets clogged, you know, your pipes, you're just going to want to clean those out. Sometimes you can get sediment building up. You know, again, you're going to want to kind of scrape that out, because think about the soil needs to be very porous. And if you're getting a lot of sediment building up in that, it's going to clog those pores. Even though they're kind of microscopic, you can't see them. All that water is filtering in through the pores. If it gets clogged with a lot of sediment, the soil can't do its job. So you're going to want to make sure that, you know, you dig out that sediment, usually not much, but, you know, and refresh the mulch layer at that point. So again, the manual makes it really easy, and it's not a lot of maintenance. It's just very specific types of maintenance that you'll need to do. It talks about the condition, what you need to do to fix that problem. So again, I'm not going to go too deeply into this. We talked about a little bit of that, but you know, weeds, maybe the water stays a little bit more ponded for a little bit longer. It could be that your soil is clogged with sediment, or the groundwater has changed, or it's getting more runoff for some reason. Erosion, that kind of thing. So, okay, so I'm going to give you some very specific, I'm going to give you this, actually, I'll send it to you so you can actually go and drive and park and explore some of these rain garden clusters. And Pat and I are happy to give you directions if you need more direction, but this is the basic location if you're planning to go on a little tour. There's one up north here. This was the first one put in. That was the Sierra Drive cluster. This here is the 3rd Avenue cluster. This is where you can see that downspout that was put above ground into the rain garden, and the forested rain garden. And then this over here, it's not a residential cluster, but it's at Hickman Park, and it's the largest rain garden we have in Edmonds. It's really well established, and it processes a ton of stormwater in an area where there was quite a bit of trouble with flooding. This is not residential, it's a municipal rain garden built in one of our parks and right-of-ways, but it's a really fascinating rain garden. It has some great interpretive signage, so you can actually really spend quite a bit of time getting to know, you know, the features of the rain garden and all of that. So that's a good place to go too. I'll send you this, that'll get you to all those places. We're also going to be giving you contact information. Like I said, Pat has that for you guys, and you can request a rain garden handbook. I'm going to be sending all of this out to you along with a link to this video presentation. But right now, since there's so few of us, I would like to stop sharing my screen and have us have sort of a live, Q&A where we can all, ask questions and have more of a conversation. So let me do that. And yeah. Okay. Can you guys?
Really quick, just thank you for all joining today. This is very cool. Obviously, Jen, she's a rock star in this field. But we do prefer to do this live and in person, every October. That is definitely our preferred way to do it. We've been gaining momentum since I've joined, which is just a couple of years, but we've been gaining momentum since that. Rain gardens in general have been gaining momentum. So that's really exciting for us. The city is on board. We're putting in more right-of-way rain gardens every year. That is our preferred way of mitigating stormwater. It adds so much beauty to the neighborhoods that we put them in, and we get so much great feedback from those that we're continuing to work with Snohomish Conservation District to get this done, and they're a great partner of ours. So I would also highly recommend them. If you don't know who Snohomish Conservation District is, their website, a quick Google search will get you there. If we eventually we'll send you some information on that, but they are the experts in rain gardens. They do free consults that come out to your house, and they can talk you through, find out if your house would be a viable option for a rain garden. And if not, maybe they can offer an alternative like a cistern or a rain barrel or some other form of action. But they are here to help residents, and we love them. We love them working with our residents in Edmonds. And so if any of you do want to pursue that route, make sure you contact Jen or myself, and we can definitely steer you in the right direction. So yeah, cool. We did get a few questions. I want to thank Kathy and Rick for asking a couple good questions. I may have answered a couple already, but one that I wanted to make sure we kind of put this out there is do you need a permit to do something like this on your own property? And the question comes up quite often where people, I'm out in the field and I'm doing something and people ask me this, but the answer is no. If this is all done on your property and you are trying to take care of a water issue you have, right? Say the water's pooling in your backyard where you don't want it to, or your front yard, or it's going down into your neighbors which you don't want it to happen. To take care of a water issue, you can handle that yourself. You don't need the city to step in and pay money for a permit to do this. So yeah, go ahead, Jen.
One caveat: if you do have critical areas on your property, like there's a wetland or a steep slope or anything, and your property might be within the buffer of that, in which case you should definitely talk to planning. You might need a permit for that.
That's a good call, and a lot of Edmonds does fall in those in that, and that is something we can.
So yeah, like even if a stream isn't on your property, you might be within a buffer, so it could be regulated.
Sure, we have a lot of green belts and things like that. In fact, I'll be heading out probably later this afternoon to go speak to a resident about this issue. So but in general, to take care of a water issue on your property, tie your drain spouts into it or something, you can do this. It may sound like a daunting task, and in some cases, it might be. You might have to rip out established plants in order to do something like this, but you will reestablish with brand new plants in a way that in the long term is good for your property. So. Talking to neighbors about your project, is that what I'm getting at, Kathy? Yeah, absolutely. I would highly recommend talking to your neighbors if you know them about your plans. And in fact, it's a great way to get momentum started for a new cluster in Edmonds. That's pretty much how our clusters, we have a great, 5 or 6 down on 3rd Avenue? I can't remember now. It's something like that. But neighbors talking to other neighbors is a great way to make an impact dramatically. Now, one house, eliminating the water coming off a property in one house is great. 2 houses, even better. But when you start adding 7 or 8 houses, eliminating the water off almost a whole road, in some cases, that is exactly what we're looking for. right? We're not just eliminating the water, but we're eliminating the pollutants as well. So I don't want to go too in depth with this, but we just put in a 1,000-foot rain garden over in the Sierra Park neighborhood. And what we're doing is we've completely eliminated the flow of that entire private and public stormwater off that road. Any of that water off that road will no longer be hitting the Perrineville Creek, which is exactly what we're trying to do, is reduce the flow to Perrineville Creek, stop erosion, stop the pollutants from reaching a fish-bearing creek. And so far we're successful. The feedback's been great, and we're going to keep pursuing our Perrineville Creek Basin projects. So if you do happen to be up in the Sierra Seaview Park neighborhood, stop by, see what's going on. We're going to be planting pretty soon.
Does anybody want to ask questions? I mean, we can all come off mute and discuss anything you want if you're interested. Okay. No other questions?
There's a couple.
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
If somebody's property is positioned properly, you're downstream, say, in my case, I'm at the lower end of the cul-de-sac. And the idea of peeling maybe even some of the collective flow out of the storm drain that's underneath the edge of my property and providing kind of a multi-property service on my property. It's about a bit more involved, obviously, but you think the city is open to that kind of a thing?
We've done a project. So if I get you right, you'd maybe like to put a rain garden in, but you see some city water also coming onto your property?
Well, I see that maybe I could put in a rain garden that has more capacity than what my property could get to it. But if we could get some from other people's runoff or from the street into it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So that would definitely be a case by case basis. But if you are interested in pursuing something like this, like, we make house calls, we can come by, we can assess your property. And even depending on what we think, we can get some consultants involved with Sonoma's Conservation District, and they can offer some advice too. But I mean,
Okay.
it's just a
I'll
matter
give
of
it some thought, but I just want to throw it out there, in case. The other thing is people can accomplish more, like neighbors, like you're saying, by pooling their resources, and you can have more efficient footprint on the property line if people can agree to that.
So Rick, it sounds like if you might be willing to, I mean, it sounds like kind of the perfect opportunity to get your neighbors together and maybe collectively start a project where, I mean, if you're downstream, maybe it could be a step thing. Like if they put in some, rain, even just like a few along the street would help capture that. But if you have a good relationship with your neighbors, that's exactly how these clusters get started, is that neighbors come together. They, there's usually an advocate or someone who's willing to take the lead in starting that conversation. And I mean, Pat is amazing working with homeowners. He's he'll come and visit with you, and we could even put you in touch with some of the homeowners that have actually done this, that have gotten together with their neighbors and formed these clusters. I mean, they're pretty excited to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, it's been a long time interest. I've been involved with the feasibility study for that facility you guys just built north of Sierra Park, and also the big facility at Seaview Park too. So yeah, it's fun stuff.
That's so cool. Yeah, I love that idea. Pat, you should go and go to Rick's house. Rick, you should.
We could have a socially distanced refreshment.
Yeah, we need to touch base, Rick, and if you're definitely up in that neighborhood too,
I'll pop you an email.
Absolutely, that'd be awesome.
Outdoor activities still allowed.
Yeah. I see a question from Kathy. I'm not sure exactly how to answer this, but she asked is there a way for homeowners to test pollutant levels before and after to see if this is working, if a rain garden is working? Jen, if you want to take a crack at this.
Yeah, this is part of a lot of conversations now, because so much of it's non-point, right? So like non-point source pollution is really hard to get a handle on. I suppose if you really, the goal is to not have any water flowing out, right, of your garden. So it would be hard to see like how would you test it if you have water flowing from your driveway and from your roof and from your lawn, and then it's going into your rain garden and getting absorbed. It would be difficult to test that specifically. I can say that there have been some amazing tests done, and it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. There was a test done, even longer, I think, maybe even 8 or 10 years ago. But basically, it was testing road runoff's effect on salmon. And what they found was when they collect, road runoff, they exposed a juvenile salmon to runoff directly from the road. I think it was a highway. And they captured that water and exposed juvenile salmon to this, and there was very high mortality. Then they took that same water, that same type of runoff from that same highway, filtered it through a column of soil that would mimic, rain garden soil mix. They basically filtered it through a soil column and then exposed the salmon to that particular water, the filtered water, and the mortality was much, much, much lower. So it has been shown that filtering through soil actually does remove certain types of pollutants. I'm sure there's been other tests done, but I haven't really researched that in quite a while. So, but that is one study that really stuck with me. So we know that soil filtration really, like that infiltration through soil, living, live, good, healthy soil is really effective in removing pollutants. Similarly, the vegetation itself sequesters all kinds of heavy metals and things like that, which is why I forgot to mention, you should never have a rain garden that's also a food garden, a food producing garden, because all of those pollutants that get trapped, some ways that they get processed is not just through the soil, but also through the uptake from the plants themselves. So I hope that answers your question. There's a lot of people that do want to know whether all of this is working, whether all of these, soil amendments are working and native planting is working, and all these things we know work. But, collectively trying to actually pinpoint like direct impact through very specific studies is hard, because it does come from so many different sources. We're running a little bit over. Feel free if you want to leave or have to leave. Pat and I are happy to stay. Pat, I know you've got an appointment at 11. Do you need to go?
So far, so good.
Okay, good. I'm willing to stay too. If you guys want to stay, we can absolutely continue the conversation. But if you want to leave, totally fine. Thank you for joining us. So, more questions? All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much. I will, I'll send out, look for an email. I'll have lots of stuff in there for you. And then of course, Pat and you're always welcome to contact us.
Hi, Darcy.
Hi there. Thank you so much. This was very helpful.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
It's really something I look forward to doing every fall, and it's way more fun to be out in the field, but you guys were, had some great questions, and it was fun that you were asking those. And
so is everybody here an Edmonds resident? Just curious.
I'm technically across the border in Woodway.
Okay, close enough.
Yeah,
close enough.
You're our best buds. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was out shoveling this morning, so I'm already kind of in process of brewing one. So, but I didn't know what I was doing.
Excellent.
Well, I hope you have a better sense now and maybe
Mhm.
figure out if you're in the right spot, first of all.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we're happy to help and or connect you to folks that can. And I think you'll enjoy.
And like I said, if you can always
resources.
drop Jen an email, which you'll get. Make sure we'll have both of our emails. And if you really want, a physical copy of this rain garden book, which I personally really enjoy the physical copy. There's one sitting on my desk, actually in my office, but I do reference it all the time. Is there something about something physically in my hand that I can flip through that I enjoy so much more? So if you do prefer a physical book, we will figure out how to get you one.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks
Okay.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Okay.
Appreciate
Enjoy.
it. Thanks, Rick.
Bye-bye.